I'm rolling solo today. I've had a lot of people cancel on me, so I've been trying to get something out for you guys. I'm giving this a shot with a regular mic. I actually wanted to talk about something that I think hasn't been talked about enough. There's a lot of political division in, country and honestly the world. And we see it more in some places and less than others. If you get to talking internationally, I've gone through, between Discord chats, Facebook, X, all these different platforms. We now really have the ability to kind of converse with each other in a way that we never really had before. So I think it's really interesting to be able to do so. So I've kind of talked to a lot of people from a lot of different places and kind of looked at a lot of different mindsets, and I've really dug into the history of our education system and just a lot of other things. This is not a partisan conversation today. This is not even like hyper libertarian. While this conversation is presented a lot in libertarian circles, I'm not even going to make it from a hyper libertarian standpoint. I'm kind of making this argument from a polarization argument. If you look into the history of our school system and Horace Mann in the Prussian model, this is something that I think is really integral to really understanding what's going on in our world today. So, in the early beginnings of the public school system, a man named Horace Mann brought something called the Prussian model. And if you know anything about the Prussians, it was a, governmental system that was pretty well known for being quite efficient, but they were also well known for being quite authoritarian. But their soldiers and their people were quite obedient to the government. And this was kind of seen as like a gold standard for a lot of growing nations during, this is like the 1930s and then and so forth, 1930s to the 1970s era of the world. Like this kind of idea really starts to take root, that we have to have this loyalty to our country. And the Prussian model was seen as a really beautiful way of doing so. So what you end up with is you end up with this regimented style of schooling, which puts authority at such a high level. This is why, if you notice, the schools are set up in such a way where people will be like, these schools are set up like a prison. It's like, no, they're set up like a barracks. If you go and you look, the cafeteria is set up like a mess hall. They set you up in all these rows. You move by the bell. This was to get people set ready and willing to work into factories and the military, honestly, to make people better obedient soldiers, citizens that were willing to defend their country at a moment's notice. This is no mistake that, children are pledging fealty. That's what the Pledge of Allegiance is. It's pledging fealty to your country. There's no mistake that there's such a, national pride built in to schooling systems, and this is across the world where you see these same kind of things in the political climate. So the Prussian model also does that. I think leads me to the major point that I want to get to is it you have this authority figure who's telling you what is right and wrong. It is not, it is set up in such a way where this authority is telling you what the correct information is, rather than you are taught how to go find correct information. So because it is geared more in that direction, and you have this arbiter of truth, and it actually gets even more explicit as schooling goes on, where they even tell you how to tell if something is a good source or a bad source, whether or not we listen to these guys or those guys. This Prussian model was heavily abused by a man named Adolf Hitler. And I'm not saying that's where we exactly have taken it, but he actually used that same thought to trot out a bunch of experts to say, this is why everything that I'm saying about the Jews is right. Obviously, it wasn't. But the point of the matter is he was able to say it, then say, look at all these experts, and everybody who disagree isn't an expert because the state can take your license. So anybody that disagreed, you just take their license, and now everyone agrees with the current thing. So we're definitely right. And this kind of thing might ring some bells in some ways for certain things. But the point of the matter is the reason it rings bells and the reason that things are done in a similar way is because human beings are human beings and we react in similar situations in similar ways. This isn't to say that everything is hitting at the same extremes. Obviously, that's not what's exactly happening. What's happening is that, like I said, if you drop a leaf in front of a trail of ants, the ants are going to go around the leaf, right? But they're not going to go the exact amount around each and every leaf. They're going to go a different amount. They're going to go in a different pattern there. But we do know that they will eventually go around the leaf. That's what the ants will do. We know this. So there's that I think has to be kind of recognized, is that human beings are going to continually react in certain frameworks in certain ways. This is, not to get off too far on a tangent, but if you go and you look at the founding fathers, why they warned about, a standing military, a national bank, there were certain things that they were warning about our country creating. And the reason that they were worried about them creating that, our country itself creating these things, and why the famous phrase, a republic if you can keep it, was said, was because Rome itself started as a republic. Our country was designed out of a basis of Rome. And we knew that Rome eventually became what Rome became, and then Rome fell. And what led Rome down the primrose path to its own destruction? These are the things that, if you actually pay attention, the things that led Rome to its destruction are actually the things that, as a matter of fact, are the things that they warned against. Don't get in an entangling alliance. Don't stretch yourself too far militarily. These are the things that destroyed Rome, and they were trying to figure out a way to avoid that. So I think this is something to really consider and think about when we're trying to figure out the problems, right, with any situation. Even if you're against throwing out the Prussian model completely, hey, we have to have some level of patriotism. We have to have some level of compliance in our society, or whatever belief that you have. I'm not even going to argue with you there. We do have to be aware, though, of the pitfalls of such a design. And one of the biggest pitfalls is, as I was just describing, is this institutionalization and normalization, to use that word, of the genetic fallacy. Now, the genetic fallacy is the assumption that there is more or less validity, or not even validity. It's that the source of information determines the truth value of said information. Give it in the most sterile way possible. Basically, the source of the information determines whether that information is true. We all inherently know that, and if you're going to sit here and disagree with me, I always say there's a million thought exercises that we can do for this. Come up with a source that you love and you think is great that has never been wrong about anything. And every piece of information that has ever come from that source has always been correct. Give me a source where the opposite is true, where everything that they've ever said has always been wrong, and they've never been ever been correct about anything. Obviously, that's not true. So we go and we start to ask ourselves, then how do we determine whether information is correct? Well, then that's when critical thinking comes in. Critical thinkers aren't good order followers. The thing is this is also where the decentralization of the information actually also comes in. And this is what brings us full circle to the question at hand, is how the hell did we get at each other's throats so heavily? If you combine a situation where we all have different sources that we believe are correct, they're gospel, the information isn't coming from one source. It's one thing when the FCC and the government's handing out radio licenses and They can say, hey, you're going a little far, and they're handing out airwaves licenses for CBS and NBC, and they can come at you and go, hey, it's a little far. But when it's the internet, what can you do? When it's a podcast, what can you do? The decentralization of the information, it's like playing whack-a-mole, even if you try. Like we saw this attempt just recently with the cancel culture push. You had Spotify and YouTube and everybody else, really pulling the iron hammer, and it just wasn't working. Every time you'd hit one down, three more guys would pop up saying the same thing. So you really couldn't stop it. You've gotten a situation where anybody and everybody can say what they think. So what do you do then? What do you do when the person who's seen as the teacher in the room, the trustworthy figure, isn't the government? Maybe it's somebody paid by a foreign country. Maybe it's somebody that's pushing for one party or another party. Maybe it's somebody, whatever dishonesty they have. But now, because we've never been taught critical thinking, we look at a world and go, how do we know it's true? How do I know it's true? How do I know who's lying to me? Because we've never been told how to tell. We've never been taught about how you independently verify things. We've never been taught about real sourcing, which is firsthand sources versus secondhand sources. It's not about whether it came from Al Jazeera. It's about who did Al Jazeera talk to? Did Al Jazeera go and talk to, some minister of a government? Well, of course he's spinning it. He's a politician, right? Did he go and talk to a soldier that just took part in the battle? Now that's a little different. Did he go and talk to somebody who lives in that city that just got bombed? That's a little different. But we're not taught these things. These are things that seem to be taught to people in journalism school, but it's not taught to anyone anywhere below that. And journalists themselves pretty obviously manipulate this. They realize that you get a trust to them, and they're not as clear about what is ironclad and what is not. And this has been a personal beef of mine that I have generally talked about a lot, actually. It's my issue with, the pandemic. It was my issue with, a lot of these wars. You're not being forthright, you're telling me things because you want me to act in a certain way. Whereas I'd rather you try to convince. It's manipulation. You're not the expert. Anybody who knows anything about anything is not sure. This has been, it goes back to Aristotle. Any man who knows anything knows he knows nothing. Any expert, if you actually listen to like the most nerdiest guy on a given topic, is going to say, I think, maybe this could happen. I'm not really quite sure to what degree and exactly. There's a lot of factors involved, and but this is what I think would probably happen. Is like, but the fraud, the snake oil salesman, is the guy that's telling you, no, dude, in 5 years, this is what's going to happen. It's going to look like this. Everything's going to be on fire. Yeah, that guy's selling you something every time. Science is never sure. It takes years. And then even still, they're like, hey, maybe somebody could figure it out. Now, like, that's the true scientists, the ones that are always curious, the ones who are always wondering what they're wrong about and what they need to know next. And this applies to any science. This really applies to it. There's a level of humbleness to a true expert, in my opinion. There's a level of, actually there are some things that I don't know. And it's why when people will ask me, hey, how do you think this economic policy will work? It's why I think the word climate works so well for describing politics or economics or, or any of these kind of things. It's like, why did it rain? Why is it that it rained? If you really sit and think about it, all the factors that go into it, fronts going this way or that way, clouds getting pushed around, evaporation, the amount of water in a lake, all the temperature of said lake, all these interesting little factors that if one or two of them were off, things didn't happen exactly the way they happened. Maybe it rains more, maybe it rains less, maybe it doesn't rain at all. We know there are some factors that will definitely cause it to rain, But even if we know what factors definitely cause it to rain, given all the million other factors, don't really know how much, don't know how long. This is why when you look at your forecast, it's not giving you an exact number, because that's how real science looks. Real science is a lot more messy. Real expertise is a lot more messy. When you're looking at anything, nothing happens for one real reason. When you're looking at anything like this, nothing happens for one reason. There's a multitude of factors. It didn't rain for one reason, it rained for 19. Because of this cold front, because of this cloud, because of this amount of rain in the atmosphere, because of this temperature change, because of this temperature, drop and this temperature rise, because all of these factors come together and then it rains. So it's good to think about politics. It's good to think about a war. It's good to think about the raising of your children this way. Whenever you're trying to teach your children something new or discipline your children on something that they're doing wrong and trying to get them to get it right, it's never one correction that does it. You never change it from one reason. They never change what they're doing for one reason. It's always a stack. It's a multitude. Human beings, especially, we're one of the craziest variables in any equation. And so if an equation includes human beings, then you're going to get that a lot. Very multivariate equation that doesn't make any sense in a physical science sense, but plays in such unpredictable yet predictable ways. And it's why human behavior for me is incredibly interesting and why I always push people to really look deeper. I'm not going to hold you guys too long. I appreciate you hanging out. I just wanted to put something out. Things have been going crazy. Grand Reckoning has new episodes out. We actually have something huge coming up, at least from my outlook, like probably one of the hugest, one of the biggest gets, at least from my viewpoint ever in my history of podcasting, is going to be on the Grand Reckoning. So I'm tremendously excited. I couldn't, oh man. But I got to tell you guys, just subscribe to both, Dad Influence and In the Grand Reckoning. There's a Patreon. You can go and throw me a couple bucks if you think this thing is really interesting and helpful to you to understand the goings-ons. But yeah, I really think that you guys could really understand this fallacy. It's not something that I've been obsessed with for so long, but it's not because I'm just some crazed weirdo. It's because I really see the gaping hole that this is. And I think it's going to create an issue with our children. It's part of the reason that I personally don't want my kids in the school system, because I don't want them following this kind of a viewpoint. I want them to be able to critically think and listen to information and go, well, what is this guy's motivations? And well, why would he lie to me? If he's on this side, is he gonna downplay, something? What would he downplay? Is he saying something that somebody on that side would downplay? That's probably true then. If you got somebody who's really like hyper Zionist, for instance, right? And they're playing down, or they're playing up, or they're talking about something that most Zionists would play down, that person probably being honest about that particular thing at that moment. There's something to that when they admit what they don't want to admit, or when they say it before they want to say it. They say something, and then a week later, that's not the good thing to say, so no one's saying it. That's when these things are really useful. Maybe you could call this a confirmation bias, but it's more of actually dissecting what a source is instead of and with at the particular point of information that you're talking about. Instead of just saying these people are known for being biased. Yeah, well, bias isn't dishonest. Bias is leaving things out and putting things in. So if your argument is to the information's bias, then why don't you attempt at explaining what's being left out, right? What's being lied about if there's an outright lie, but what's being left out, what's being said and what's not being said. because that's usually how bias works. You know what I mean? They're not going to outright lie to you, not in a lot of cases. And a lot of times you'll find this out. You'll be like, this guy lied to me. And then you'll go back and you'll look at the article and you'll be like, well, if you're really digging at it, it's technically not a lie. It's just insanely misleading. That's the game. So once you start to understand that that's how bias works, then that's how you explain it to somebody. If somebody's giving you a source from an insanely biased publication or source, then come at it next time with a, hey, let me tell you what this source is missing, right? Come at it with something like that. Don't come at it with, let me tell you why you should never trust this source. That's crazy. That is just such a crazy way of looking at the world, and it will shut your mind and it will destroy your intelligence because you will be missing half of the story always, and it will leave you open to failure in debate. So if you really care about winning, like so many people that I seem to discuss with do, then actually plug your holes up in your defenses. If you're only listening to the people who helped building, not the people who are trying to tear them down, you're not going to have a really good argument anyway. It's definitely something that I think everyone needs to deeply consider. Deeply consider these alternative thought processes and points of view, and don't jump to your guns about bias, and actually try to explain why something's wrong. If you're going to get into this space of debate about ideas, like, why can't you come above high school logic games? You know, like, this is the stuff that your teacher taught you in high school to try to placate you and make it easy when she's reading your high school research paper. It's wild. It's like, literally, people will be like, this is Hamas numbers. Look at these videos from Hamas. It's showing how horrific Hamas is. And it's just like, well, you listen to Hamas or not listen to Hamas? It's like, oh, all of a sudden you understand how the genetic fallacy works. That if Hamas is admitting how horrible Hamas is, that we should play that for other people and say, hey, look, even Hamas admits how horrible Hamas is. Now you understand what I'm doing? Or is it confirmation bias still? Am I just waving away an obvious thing? Us learned, college educated, which went to college, by the way, us learned, college educated people, you know, we know that there's these scholarly sources. What are scholarly sources? It's other people in fucking college writing shit down a lot of times. Whether it be a professor or somebody going for their master's or doctorate, yes, but a lot of times it's other people in a college writing stuff down. Like, they don't have magic scholar powers that make them right. That would be a genetic fallacy, but they are people that sit around and study things all day. So it's like, there is a value there, which is admitted from what the point I'm making here. I'm not saying there is no value to, you know, these scholarly articles. Obviously there is. Like, it's people that are studying and thinking and learning for a living a lot of times in these cases. So, like, yeah, these are not dumb people, but we must also realize that they are people. And just like me and you, we get things wrong. I mean, I'm a nerd expert in a lot of things. Like, there's a lot of, you know, shows and, you know, just to take it out of something even contentious. Like, there's TV shows that I could tell you word for word what the guy's going to say next because I watched it so many times. You think I couldn't get anything wrong about it? I'm a scholar basically on that show. I've spent hundreds of hours watching one season of this show that's 12 hours long. You don't think I can get anything wrong about that? Are we going to be honest here with ourselves? Are we going to be truthful? We all know that we're experts in something, and we get things wrong about it all the time. The expertise is about likelihood. It's not about is. It's not about is true. It's about likelihood to be true. And it's the same thing with bias. So it's like, what are we looking at? What information are we looking at? Let's actually dissect the information, guys. Let's think. Let's use these noggins we have so heavily equipped. I don't let's think harder. The world demands it of us, and our kids need it. Like our world is going to shit because nobody wants to think. It's not because we're all stupid. I refuse to believe that. If I the conversations that I can have with a regular person face to face, like I can sit down and have with somebody who doesn't understand. Like I can sit here and walk you from where you believe to where I believe and you understand it. I've done this so many times. Now whether you agree with it or not is different, but you'll understand it. So it's possible. People are smart. People are a lot smarter than people think. And I mean, I've explained very complex things to people who were quote unquote stupid. Like the average person would look at that person and go, "This is a dum dum." But it's not that's not the way it works, man. If you make it interesting, if you can really explain it well, people will understand it. They'll take it to heart. So, what are we doing? Why are we wasting our time? Why are we wasting our time telling people that the heroes that stood up for their ideas are biased and thus shouldn't be listened to? Wouldn't it be a better world where I can say, hey, look, this is actually the best that my team has to offer and not get 15 messages about how biased they are towards your team? Obviously, that's why I was sharing them. I wanted you to hear the left wing perspective on X. I wanted you to hear the right wing perspective on X. I wanted you to hear the libertarian perspective on X. Like, how are we going to live in a world without that? How are we going to live in a free country? This is why this free speech issue and all of this is becoming such a big problem. Like if you care about free speech, this is definitely part of it, right? Is it not? It's like, what is the point of free speech? What are we trying to do here? Like, it's obvious that with free speech, the point of it is that we all can merge our ideas together and come to the better conclusion. But if we can't even listen to each other's ideas, because I'm like, nah, dog, that's the weird lefties over there, or no, dog, you're citing OAN. What the hell? Like, it's one of my proudest moments in social media history was somebody shared a Mother Jones uh article, and it was 10 statistics to prove that, guns should be banned immediately. And a friend of mine shared of that. And it was just full of right wingers and libertarians both stark raving mad going, this is freaking Mother Jones. You do understand Mother Jones is like left, 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 hardcore left. Like they're the most biased participant you could ever use for a citation on gun control. And what did I have under there? Here's the first statistic, and here's how they manipulated it to make it look the way they wanted it to. It is a little higher than you might think here, but actually, if you think about it, this is the reason why. This statistic is actually inflated because of Y, X, and Z. This one is actually inflated here. And if you look at the methodology in this report that they're using, this is actually how they did X, Y, and Z. And one by one by one, I debunked every single statistic. Why can't you do that? You know what I mean? You can share your favorite influencer doing that. And you think it's so gangster when they do it, right? Oh, man, look at Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh or Destiny, and he's breaking down this newest thing, one point by point by point, and it's so gangster. And it's, man, they thought they really got us, but we got this guy, right? But that's actually the point, though, right? What if I'm hardcore libertarian, right? And you're hardcore leftist, and you share this Mother Jones because you like the reporting from Mother Jones, because that's what you listen to all the time, and because it's what you listen to all the time, you don't actually know that there are counter arguments to all these statistics. And so when you post it and all anyone ever says is, screw Mother Jones, they're a bunch of lefties, then all you think is, oh, these right wingers are just pissed because they don't want gun control. They don't actually have any good arguments against gun control. They just don't want gun control. Thus we have this polarization. And there's never any learning. There's never any reflection of, wait, did this statistic I share really not illustrate what I think it does? Is it kind of, am I overplaying my hand here a little bit? Because it's like, I'm insanely anti-war. I show people antiwar.com all the time, and I will praise their reporting all the time. Am I overplaying my hand if I just play I can only play what antiwar.com has reported. In some cases, yeah. But because later on, these things aren't going to be true. It's just like if what you have is unverified sources that are like, it's like, yeah, I know that antiwar.com, they're sourcing when it comes to their unverified sourcings. Usually they're not going to report on it if it's good, if it's not good. But the rest of the media doesn't operate that way. This comes to actually knowing the source. But if you presented to me a source and said, hey, this is actually the case with this source, it's actually like this, and then, yeah, I'd say, yeah, okay. You just like the guys, right? Are you overplaying your hand? This is the question. Are you going to look like a crazy man as time goes on? But if that's what you want, if you're wanting to win the argument, is that what you're looking to do? Are you looking to win the argument? Are you looking to have the best idea? Because do you want to win the argument with your idea, or do you want to have the best idea? I think that's what I'm going to leave you guys with. And that's the question I want you to ask yourself. Do you want your idea to win the argument, or do you just want to find out what the best idea is? And actually ask yourself that question truthfully and think about it truthfully.